யாரெல்லாம் வந்திருக்கு பார்க்கலாமா? ம்
நூற்றாண்டு கடந்து நம் முன்னே இன்றும் புது நூற்றாண்டு கடந்து நம் முன்னே இன்றும் புது ஒளி வீசு நூற்றாண்டு கடந்து நம் முன்னே இன்றும் புது ஒளி வீசு நூற்றாண்டு கடந்து நம் முன்னே இன்றும் புது ஒளி வீசு பொலிவோடு மிளிரும் அது எங்கள் கல்லூரி. ஒற்றுமைதான் இதன் கொள்கை, வளர்ச்சிக்கு எல்லை இல்லை. வேற்றுமை இங்கில்லை எங்கள் கல்லூரி. SCC. நட்புக்கு குறைவில்லை, கவலை
மியூட் பண்ணுங்க.
Suhash, start. Audio.
Good evening to all the participants and distinguished guests present here at this online national webinar series on contextualizing literature and literary theories, organized by the Department of English and Center for Research at Scott Christian College. To know about Scott Christian College, it was established in the year 1893 and is currently celebrating 127 years of service. The motto of the college is, "The truth shall make you free." Scott Christian College has been awarded 27th rank at the All India level by National Institute Ranking Framework (NIRF) and secured 7th rank in Tamil Nadu. With much to say, I now request Dr. J.G. Duresh, Head of the Department of English, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
And gentlemen, warm greetings from Scott Christian College. It's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you to the webinar series, Contextualizing Literature and Literary Theory. We are grateful to all the participants and extend a hearty welcome to you. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Molika, a renowned scholar and thinker from JNU, as the resource person for this evening program. Sincere welcome to you, ma'am. I would like to appreciate Dr. Linda for the strenuous efforts she has taken in organizing this program. I hope this series of lectures will be of great use to all the participants. Let us share our knowledge together. Thank you very much for your participation and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, sir. A quote from Alexander Pope, which says, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing," and we are all here to learn something new today. To proceed with the meeting, I would like to request Dr. Linda Primden, Associate Professor, Department of English, to introduce our resource person for the day, Dr. Molika Castida. Over to you, ma'am.
A very good evening to you all. First of all, I thank our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for helping us to organize this webinar. On behalf of the Department of English, Scott Christian College, I welcome you all to the 3-day webinar series by 3 distinguished personalities from two well-known universities, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, Vidyasagar University, West Bengal, and a very famous college in Tamil Nadu, Loyola College. As we all recognize, the webinar topic, contextualizing literature and literary theories, is very much the demand of the day. The topic selected for each day is related to the present day scenario, and it is worth to listen to from inspiring speakers. I request you not to miss the opportunity given. Apart from Tamil Nadu, today we have delegates from all over India, Chandigarh, Jammu and Kashmir, Karnataka, West Bengal, Hyderabad, Banaras, Amritsar, Aurangabad, Varanasi, Secunderabad, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Raipur, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Haryana, etc. I congratulate each and every one of the participants today. I wholeheartedly welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Molika Dastida. Dr. Molika Dastida is working as Associate Professor in the Center for Comparative Politics and Political Theory, School of International Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University. Her areas of interest are liberalism and minority cultures, politics of modernity and tribal citizens in India, and especially she has first-hand experience on tribal citizens in India, which she is going to delineate with us today. She had worked as an assistant professor in the University of Delhi, a fellow at the Center for Studies in Social Science, Calcutta, a fellow Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, New Delhi, DAD visiting fellow in Germany, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung postdoctoral fellow at the University of Dortmund, Germany. She had received various awards and honors, and she has more than 10 journal publications and 2 book monographs, both on minority plural society, and also she has several book articles. Ma'am, I deem it a privilege and feel honored to have you in our midst today. May God bless you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable, precious time in preparing the topic to impart the knowledge you have gained to the audience. Before moving on to the speaker, soon after the talk, there will be a discussion and you could post your queries on the chat box. And feedback form will be given on the 3rd day of the webinar. Now, over to Dr. Molika. Audio.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much, Linda Premlin. I'm much indebted to you for your very kind invitation. And honestly speaking, though I have published on my research on tribal citizens and border thinking, I am for the first time talking on a nationwide platform like this. I have presented seminars in Nehru Memorial Tinmurti Bhavan, and I have also published papers in EPW on the same research, but this is a more of a direct contact for me. So, and I know my audience would be much varied, from undergraduate students, I guess, right? From undergraduate students to teachers, to faculty members, and to many other interested audiences from all over the country. So I had to make my research paper much more comprehensive for a general audience. And so without wasting much time, I would like to start reading from whatever I have jotted down for particularly today's presentation. And just to give a very quick introduction, when I say tribal citizens, I am talking mostly about the East Himalayan people from Darjeeling, Sikkim region. They are the Nepali-speaking Janajati communities. They are the Nepali-speaking tribal communities, each having their own mother tongue. But because of historical reasons for past 200 and more years, they mostly communicate in Nepali language, whereas they all have their own Janajati languages and worldview, and those language philosophy guide their everyday life world practices. Without much more introduction, let me just start reading from what I have summarized and jotted down for today's presentation. I hope I'm audible. Please let me know if I'm not. The overwhelming idea behind my research on tribal citizen is to engage with the culture of indigenous knowledge practices that continue to make interventions and disruptions in the modernity of national cultures. The idea is to examine whether the practicing Adivasi or the practitioner of traditional knowledge are somewhat more than being citizen subject. When I say more than being citizen subject, I mean not merely a citizen in terms of self-interested individuals answerable only to the regime of the modern state. So are they something more? Are they also in effect subjects of indigenous knowledge and different rationality? The aim is also to explore the unpersuaded social behavior of indigenous people the world over, or the Adivasi Indians. When confronted with the local ecosystem upsetting developmental plans of modern state, the Adivasis, the resistance comes from when they are confronted with the local ecosystem upsetting developmental plans of the modern state. The resistance to this assimilationist power of technological regime are often claimed by the indigenous people all over the world on grounds of autonomy of their worldview and traditional autonomy of their traditional knowledge practices. This presentation will draw our attention to the split subjectivity of the tribal citizen in present-day India by engaging with those groups that continue with their life world practices irrespective of finding a place or inclusion, quote unquote, inclusion in the state policies that follow a linear path of developmental growth. The construction of modern nations in the colonized societies following the post-Enlightenment European knowledge of modernity saw progressive marginalization of the groups that refused to depart from the past practices and continue with their early system of knowledge in their everyday life. As marginalized communities, the indigenous tribal groups in most parts of the world have remained committed to borderline conditions of split subjects and discursive regimes. The acts of resistance and acts of defiance in community action can perhaps be seen as agentic political practice of the indigenous or Adivasi societies. The concern, therefore, is to engage with the border thinking, makes communities neither contemporaneous with modernity of the dominant national culture, nor simply out of date or lagging behind that modernity. The study of marginalized communities in their temporal disjunctness, that is, in remaining both outside and inside nation state and capital, is likely to lead us to the political position of different modernity. Although evident in almost all the Adivasi inhabited regions of India, my attempt here will be to narrate from the discourses of tribal communities in East Himalayas. As members of scheduled tribe, a modern governing category in India, several hill tribes or Adivasi Janajatis in Eastern Himalayas are producing instances of groups inhabiting the borderline conditions of subscribing to a different temporality while being at the same time the political subject of a modern democracy. In engaging with the culture of indigenous knowledge practice that continue to make interventions and disruptions in the modernity of national culture, this paper seeks to draw references from the Limbu Janajati literature and Lepcha traditional knowledges on biodiversity conservation in West and North Sikkim. Now, in my next section, that is the Janajati literature as language of education, I would like to introduce the Limbu Janajati literature. Enumerated as one of the Indian languages of education in regional schools and colleges, the Limbu Janajati literature presents a condition where I ask my participant to listen carefully here. A Janajati literature presenting a condition where the tribal citizen is bringing in a knowledge system that is heavily borrowed from the discourses of their oral narratives or oral scriptures. Now, borrowed from this discourse called Mundhum, or in other words, Limbu oral scriptures that guide the lifehold practices. Bringing directly these oral narratives into the realm of schools and university education. The Limbu school textbooks, relying much on the transcribed version of the oral narratives, in effect, educate the secondary level students of Limbu language in the aesthetic explanations of life around in the forested lands. While the botanical explanation of the same are also offered by the curriculum of modern sciences that are limited to students opting for natural sciences. For an ordinary community member, however, a general awareness of the Mundhumi orality makes him or her much informed about the innumerable species of flowers and birds and their ecological relevance in the natural habitations of East Himalaya. Now, this Mahakirati script-based Limbu language is recognized by the communities, by government of Sikkim as one of the 3 languages of the indigenous communities in the state, and is being taught as a vernacular subject in the schools of the region since as early as 1976. The Limbu school textbooks, relying much on the transcribed version of the oral narratives, in effect, educate the secondary schools level school students in aesthetic explanation of their of life in the forested lands. The narration of Yorokma Mundu for class 8 textbook of prose, for instance, holds symbolic relevance by bringing in the Janajati worldview in the realm of modern school curriculum. The transcribed oral narrative in the textbook say that the primitive men became cultivators with the help of a wise sparrow, who had taught them how to cultivate forested lands. The explained process is nothing but the jhum cultivation banned by modern governmental practices, policies, yet widely practiced in the remote tribal regions. In exchange, this imparting of knowledge by this sparrow was given in exchange of a vow that men should never kill any sparrow in future. This tradition is strictly maintained among the Limbu cultivators even when their crops get destroyed by hordes of invading small birds, including sparrows. Similarly, the rapid reader textbook from class 9 and 10 standard students of, for example, consist of a very significant transcription of Fungchuet, or the Mundhum, on the origin of flowers and their significance in this world. According to this oral tradition, the supreme goddess of wisdom had first created earthscape of the Himalayas, followed by the hills and the rivers. But the forest of the creepers and big trees did not yet look beautiful to her. So she created the animal world for the forests. And then it was for the bees in the forest that she had to create flowers. At last, the goddess was happy, for the flowers offered her with the aesthetic beauty that she was searching for in her own creation. Now, this ancient Limbu belief, as narrated through this Mundhum or Fungchuet, in a purely unrelated course of event, was upheld in a language of scientific knowledge too. A recent publication of biological research has almost endorsed this aspect of Limbu cosmology, as the British professor of biology, Dave Golson, narrates a similar story of chronological evolution of forests, then bees, and then flowers, scientifically, in his book, Sting in the Tail, in 2013. However, the Limbu textbook transcriptions of Mundhum on flowers goes on to further narrate that even the creation of flowers had followed a chronology in which the forest flowers came first, that is Stokpetla Fung, or Singdum Fung, that is rhododendron and orchid, followed by the flowers found in near human habitation. For instance, the lotus. Such oral knowledge and on indigenous species of flower, most of all draws a connection between the non-human with the human, as it seeks to explain the symbolic relevance of many flowers to human life. If Sekmuri symbolizes the celebration of life, Midchiri represents the completion of life, that is death. Singjango, the flower that regenerates soul or rejuvenates the spirit. Being a part of the larger Nepali-speaking community in East Himalayas, the members of Limbu tribe, like many others in the region, converse in Nepali as language of communication. But in their refusal to accept Nepali primer as the standard guideline for designing the Limbu language primers, practitioners of Limbu language have helped retain the materiality of a culture that differs significantly from the dominant linguistic.
Hello, ma'am? Hello, ma'am? Hello?
Is it got muted?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, how long?
Oh, okay, for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I am talking about the primer making exercise in Limbu language with Bibi Moringla, who is still very much alive and very much amongst us, and he did an enormously important job of making this tribal language into transforming it into literature through the primer making as well as through literature transcription. And this primer was made with keeping in mind not to copy the Aryan Sanskritized language primers and keep the distinctiveness of the language, that is East Himalaya, Sino-Tibetan or Sino-Tibeto-Burman school of language, that with the glottal stops and the phonetics of tonal character phonetics, and deleting those consonants and vowels which do not get practice in the language speaking. I hope I could summarize. These transcriptions from oral narratives, it may be pointed out here, are instrumental in imparting different ecological sensitivities among the students of the language than their lessons in botany and biology in schools in Sikkim. Even if the botanical explanations of the same are also offered by the curriculum of modern sciences, it would be limited information in comparison to the vast and varied species of plants found in the region. The scientific knowledge would also remain limited to those few students who opt for natural sciences for their higher degrees, whereas having oral knowledge of the Mundhumi narration makes even an illiterate member of the community much knowledgeable about the innumerable species of flowers and birds and their ecological relevance for the natural habitations of East Himalaya. Commenting upon the marginalization of indigenous language and wisdom, G. N. Devi, in his study of tribal literature in India, observes that given the immense odds that tribals have been fighting, including that of displacement and land alienation, it is nothing short but of a miracle that they preserve their language and their stock of wisdom. And this certainly goes on to enrich the polyphony of voices that make the Indian tribal literature an unusually rewarding experience in learning and in humility. Devi writes that since Janajati literary tradition have been oral in nature, it is since 19th century when the print technology started impacting Indian languages, the fate of the oral became precarious. A gross cultural neglect had to be faced by those languages which remained outside the print technology. The official patronage of the Limbu language as one of the state languages of Sikkim since as early as 1976 has significantly helped this ancient Sino-Tibetan language in the region to rediscover its linguistic heritage. Incidentally, the present corpus of Limbu literature published from Sikkim forms the most contemporary repository of Kirati linguistic tradition in the entire Himalayan region of Eastern Himalaya, thus making it one of the rare genre of script-based Indian tribal literature, much in practice in the contemporary times. Now, I have highlighted in my written publications about groups of our time offering sites of difference. The tribal resistance in becoming subjects of modern industrialized state stems from their preference to remain traditional knowledge subjects instead. The communitarian agency of groups of our time is perhaps best expressed in the observation of a young college graduate who now lives in Zongu. In Zongu in North Sikkim, through our lived practices, we have offered an alternative site to the modern urban living. As a student of Namche Government College, I have seen how urbanizations have adversely affected the towns in Sikkim. I don't want Zongu to suffer the impact of modernization, so I fully support the ACT, or the Affected Citizens of Tista River movement. Now, this is a movement that is going on in North Sikkim, especially in Zongu. Again, big hydroelectric dam on the highly upstream River Tista. It is with this conviction that Zongu Lepchas are resisting the National Hydropower Corporation's Stage 4 dam on upstream Tista. Their ecological knowledge tells them that tunneling of the hills for carrying piped water to the powerhouse hugely upsets the water tables on hilltops. It has immediate toll on the natural vegetation around and for the homestead farming on its slopes. The hilltop water seeps into the tunnels and dries up many streams in the region. If disturbing the water table on the top affects all streams in the region, boring of rocks create huge debris leading to the major erosions of soil and recurring landslides. This upsets the entire ecosystem around the site of the dam. We Lepcha people have preserved the storehouse of pure oxygen and clean water for humanity. People in the plains must realize this, and if they love mountains and rush to them during the summers, they should also not allow the destruction of hills, streams, and forests by supporting the developmental projects on the mountains, says one farmer who is resisting the hydro dam on Tista in Zongu. Now, before I conclude or come to my concluding statements, maybe I would like to, or shall I first, I think I should rather, I would like to, for the students who are viewing it, because I use the term border thinking of the tribal citizens, I would like to get into a little bit, very briefly, about this concept of border thinking or split subjectivity. Yes. This is though borrowed from the idea Walter Mignolo has been writing on in his literature on critical cosmopolitanism. There is an concept of cosmopolitanism, but a critical cosmopolitanism, which is largely from the viewpoint of the colonized, not the colonizers, but the colonized. So that's why it is called critical cosmopolitanism. In his project of devising critical cosmopolitanism, Walter Mignolo too talks of a borderland which is at the exteriority of modernity. Yet, this exteriority is not something that remained untouched by modernity and its elements of capital and nation state, but has thinking to offer. It has this borderline or borderline positions have thinking to offer from the position of colonial difference, and hence present the option that goes beyond benevolent recognition, which is a very common term of social science literature made more popular by Charles Taylor, benevolent recognition of multiple groups, or humanitarian pleas for inclusion, which is again a very popular term in social science literature, that is of inclusiveness. So these border thinking goes much beyond inclusion and much beyond recognition. The border thinking or critical or dialogic cosmopolitanism that Mignolo espouses is again found to be practiced by minority or marginalized cultures emerging from various spatial and historical locations of colonial difference. As non-national cultural communities, the minority agency of indigenous knowledge groups thus differ from those groups speaking in the name of nation. When I say in the name of nation, let me clarify it. This nation is the mid-19th century post-European Enlightenment idea of nation state. The post-European Enlightenment notion of modern nation that emerged in mid-19th century Europe is afflicted with the liberal notion of equality. Equality that does not recognize the non-differential concept of cultural time. Even in extending cultural respect or recognition of equal cultural worth, it does not recognize the disjunctive. The borderline temporalities of many language communities identified as indigenous cultural groups who in their understanding of circular time transcend the binary of outside or inside modern nations, part and whole of national culture, difference and assimilation of being recognized or not assimilated, or being both traditional and modern and refusing to choose between traditional and modern, in which most debates of multiculturalism are usually cast. That is to distinguish and recognize groups that are different from the national mainstream. The peculiar need of Enlightenment modernity to dominate and homogenize makes indigenous communities as the likes of the Lepchas of East Himalaya not only a temporal disjunct, but also help them acquire a level of most, quote unquote, most primitive among the scheduled tribes of India. The Lepcha ecological prudence is most vivid in their emotional bondings with the non-human world, be it the high altitude lakes, the glacial lakes, the mountains, the springs, the rivers, the female of the wild animal species, and many, many more aspects of knowledge on biodiversity preservation. In engaging with the discourses of minorities, the idea is to understand what makes this oral and non-modern sources of knowledge an important domain of knowledge in spite of being much different from the rationality of Western modernity. In opting for life-fall practices that endorse all forms of life-sustaining and nature-nurturing knowledge, many marginalized communities stand clearly in opposition to the modern technological knowledge of developmentalism. If the former is offering the rationality for a long-term ethical sustainability, the latter, that is modernity, is more pragmatic in celebrating the spectacular human advancement in technology. However, to conclude, in view of the interrelated social and ecological crisis that the modern world faces today, it is imperative, it is more than imperative to accept and acknowledge the multiple knowledge systems, perhaps most vibrantly evident in the indigenous knowledge practices of many cultural groups of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for an enlightening speech. It has made us realize how much we know and how much we do not know. The session has come towards the conclusion and the doors are open for discussion from Mr. Chakravarti. He says that lifestyle change of any civilization presupposes certain modifications. Urbanization eats into tribal society, but that's inevitable. I request you to interact on this observation.
Okay, so that was an observation, no question. Okay, so could you just quickly say on what part I should focus?
The question is about he's asking about what to say, that modernization normally gets into tribal society, inevitably. It's inevitable.
It is inevitable. Yes, of course it is inevitable. And that is why you come to know about the struggles and you come to know about the resistances that's coming from these communities. But let me give you an example. When it is between us and them, then we know that it is inevitable and they should modernize. But when it comes from the citizens of Bangalore or citizens of Chennai or citizens of Delhi, in protecting the forest and the lakes and the estuaries and the river beds of the city, that is causing much flood havoc, and how the natural drainage system has been usurped by urbanization, then perhaps these kind of binaries do not make us uncomfortable. We realize that this is ecological knowledge, this is ecosystem knowledge, and we should go by the ecological knowledge. But when it comes from the illiterate, poor, very poor looking Adivasis, we feel that they are to be modernized. They are to be sensitized. They are to be told about technology. They are to be told about the industrial wonders. Just because they do not know, they are in dark. That's why they are opposing. No, that was the whole idea of talking about knowledge of orality, knowledge, indigenous knowledge practices, and indigenous knowledge practices, for as just clear example, has allowed pockets of pristine forest, pockets of pristine water sources, pockets of pristine vegetation retain for humanity, not for only them, for the big city dwellers of Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, and Chennai, and Bangalore. When they have to run to the hills, they have to run to the nature. It is the Adivasi communities who have maintained and preserved and conserved it. So when you see from this angle, then you realize that actually these people had a knowledge system that needs to be engaged with. And that is a demand of our time. Thank you.
Ma'am, one more question. It's from me. Okay, I've been to Nepal and I've seen that there is no border over there. The security is lax. And from what you said, I've seen lakes drying up. So many things have happened over there. So do you think cross-border learning would
Sorry, are you talking about the areas that fall inside Nepal?
Yes.
And you were talking about some ecological degradation there?
Yes.
Oh, yes, of course. Wherever there are human pressure, there is much of ecological degradation, especially in the hills of Nepal. and lot of erosion, soil erosion, and lot of forest depletion of forest has resulted in soil erosion. These are the modern problems that every part of our society or every nook and corner is facing. It is about highlighting those pockets which are resisting, highlighting those pockets which have maintained things in pristine form. For instance, let me give an example of Niyamgiri. Niyamgiri is very popular now because it protested against the bauxite mining. And it protested by saying that Niyam Raja, that hill, is the ruling deity, is the deity that's protecting us with not only vegetation, clean water, clean environment, and enough food for us for centuries. And this hill, to be mined for bauxite, will make us perish. Very well and understood. Urban people will say bauxite, aluminium is must. We must go ahead and mine it. These few tribal people of Dongria Kod can be separated and given some land in some barren land somewhere else. But that aluminium is much must for national resources. As more and more climate changes issues or events take place, it is not us, it is not the Adivasis, but the climate scientists are saying retention of forests, retention of the hills, retention of those pristine rainforests are absolutely must to prevent this kind of death cycles of cyclones and hurricanes. Now, you can see it in either way. You can see it whether Dongria Kod's belief in Niyam Raja as their deity, as the lectures believe Kanchenjunga as their ruling deity, as their guardian deity, and or not only Kanchenjunga, all the hills, all the mountain peaks in Zongu have some or the other clan deity. You can see it that way, or you can see it saving humanity. For instance, Eastern Himalayan zone of Sikkim, I thought I would just be late, so I did not mention a part of my lecture, which is called Sikkim Experience. Sikkim is the only state in the world, not only in India, it is the only world that's been recognized with the first fully organic state in the entire world. And former Chief Minister of Sikkim, Chamling, recently received an award in Rome from the UNESCO people for achieving this feat. And Sikkim's government openly acknowledge in their biodiversity conservation that all three indigenous communities of Sikkim, that is the Lepchas, the Bhutias, and the Limbus, have extremely rich indigenous knowledge to kind of conserve the pristineness of Eastern Himalayan forests. And it is one of the UNESCO certified biodiversity hotspots in the entire world. It is UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, these World Heritage Sites, biodiversity hotspots, as any student even of class 9 and 10 standard would know how important they have become. So shall we thank the local indigenous community, or shall we thank the modern governmental practices?
Okay, thank you. There is one final question. It's from Ms. Mayurika Datta. She has said, I have a question. Hope it is answered. How an Indian tribal fiction writer standing at the edge of contraptional vision be called a modern writer? Also, could his works be called as modern novels, although they have the underlying facts of traditional belief in black magic and witchcraft?
Well, I think Dr. Duresh and others are more equipped to answer this kind of an literary debate. What is modern and what is non-modern in literature? Well, I can try. And I can say that if somebody is narrating about black magic, or if somebody is narrating about some obscurantist practices, say J.K. Rowling, we would never question her modernity, shall we? We will never. But if it comes from a tribal herself, who may be just narrating, who may even have some faith or not, but then it becomes a question that whether her literature should be taken as modern literature or should be taken as categorized as non-modern, early, whatever. I come from a school of thought where literature is literature. There is no difference between modern literature and non-modern literature. Now, but I know in literary theory, there are schools of debates. So engaging with that, I would like to say that when a tribal practitioner narrates, it is all about narrating her version of the story. And entire literary world is all about what you narrate and how you narrate and how you have been able to communicate to the world. To me, if your story has some, if not all, some relevance for the entire humanity, I think that story is modern enough.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Ma'am, one final question. It's from Mr. Ravi Bhushan. He's asking whether orality can be restored in technology-driven cultures.
Oh, sorry, one more time, please.
Yes, he's asking whether orality can be restored in technology-driven cultures.
Yeah, there has been in a sense, while in our literary classifications, we keep debating in our classrooms and seminar rooms whether it is modern or non-modern, whether it can get the tag of modern. The knowledge society out in the world are out to gather as much narratives, as much indigenous knowledge, as much morality as possible. And how they're doing it, there are big knowledge missions. For instance, the US Library of Congress. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
US Library of Congress or British Library and the German scientific Wissenschaft, Gesellschaft for, I'm forgetting the exact name in Berlin. These are the consortium who are engaged for last more than 1 decade in transcripting all forms of oral knowledge from Central Asia to East Himalaya, to the Southeast Asian tribes, to the Southern Africa, Western Africa, and entire range of Eurasian as well as Mongolian part of the world, in just collecting knowledge in form of orality, or narratives in form of orality. It is a national and international knowledge mission. That's what I'd like to point out.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This concludes our discussion session. With the time we have, I now request Dr. L. Judith Sophia, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Scott Christian College, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I thank God Almighty for granting us this opportunity to conduct this webinar through the Department of English. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Molika Dastater, Associate Professor, Center for Comparative Politics and Political Theory, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Ma'am, we are very much pleased to listen to your talk on tribal citizens and border thinking in India, especially you threw light on East Himalayan people and their the social behavior of Adivasis, and that has to be that in Indian government it has to be included, because this critical colonial thinking has homogenized all the tribal thinking, that is heterogeneous tribal practices have been demolished, and now it is high time to think, and we have to collect all the primitive matchless knowledge system of these tribal people, and that has to be preserved for the human sustainability. And that is very much focused by your paper or this presentation, ma'am. We all enjoyed your thoughts disseminated through this lecture, especially highlighting the knowledge system which India must have now. And thank you very much, Dr. Molika Dastedi, for highlighting all these issues. And in the present scenario, we are very much in need of this indigenous knowledge that has to be preserved at any cost in order to improve our future, or in order to even for our livelihood. We need that. Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, I would like to thank our correspondent for giving us this opportunity to conduct this webinar. And next, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. J.R.V. Edward, for providing us an opportunity to conduct this webinar. And next, I would like to thank Dr. J.G. Duresh, the head of the Department of English, for being the backbone to conduct such academic endeavors in our department. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to thank the coordinator of this webinar, Dr. Linda, for coordinating everything and arranging this in a meticulous manner. Thank you, ma'am, for having thought of this particular webinar on this occasion. Thank you. And next, I would like to thank all the participants from various universities throughout our country, and also the scholars and students from various colleges and universities. I thank you all. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the colleagues of our own department who have participated. And next, I would like to thank Shugas, who has moderated all these events. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, can any one of the participants share their feedback regarding the session? You can unmute your mic and your video. Participants, anyone can say what you feel about the webinar? Kindly unmute your mic.
Unmute பண்ணிட்டு.
Participants, anyone can just give a general view about what you felt about the program. Yeah, I can see many people typing. You can just say it over here.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello. It was a very much enlightening session. Oh, thank you, ma'am, Molika ma'am, for
Not that much audible, ma'am.
hello. I'm audible. Am I audible? Hello.
Hello.
Am I
Am I
audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes. So thank you, ma'am, for such an enlightening and thought-provoking session, thought-provoking lecture. So I I get very much interested in this in this lecture that ma'am talked about Himalayan tribes and their literature and language. So, and thank you very much for this for Scott Christian College for arranging this enlightening webinar series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. Just a gentle reminder to all the participants. Tomorrow, we have Dr. Indranil Acharya, Professor, Department of English, Vidyasagar University, as the resource person. He will be speaking on the topic, Theory of Cultural Marginality in the Study of Dalit Literature. The meeting will commence exactly at 5 p.m. I request all the participants to log in at least by 4:55 p.m. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we will
Hello?
be on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I thank, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you so much, and especially the one who was conducting the question answer session. Thank you so much for at least organizing this huge platform. I think your name is Subhash S, right?
Suhash, yeah.
Suhash, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Suhash. Although it seems very simple when we talk through screen, but organizing it and getting all the people together on the same platform at the same time, it takes a lot of time and energy. And there is a joke going on, have been going on for time, that technology is designed to make your life easy and simple and less time consuming. It's just the opposite, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and we all feel that a direct communication could have been much easier. But yes, I wouldn't have talked to people as far as south of Tamil Nadu, to even, I think people were also logged in from Chandigarh. So this, of course, every knowledge system has its own plus and minuses, and this is the plus we should be grateful to. But we should not be only taken in by the plus and forget human interaction, because without human interaction, there is no human survival. Thank you.
Thank you.